Well, welcome back to a new episode of the Threshold Lab, and we're continuing our season one, exploring the inner game of coaching and leadership. And today I'm really excited to not only chat with somebody who's been a great mind in the game of basketball, who is very passionate about leadership and conversations that I've listened to from him, but also somebody that has some ties for me back close to home in Oregon. So I've been looking forward to this conversation. And so, without further ado, I'd really like to welcome Coach Scott Rueck, head coach of the Oregon State women's basketball team, to the conversation today. Coach,
Hey,
welcome.
great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, yeah. This is again, there's a lot we can get into. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't have you at least start off with talking about there's this other university that's very close to Oregon State. It's called Linfield. I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you could just maybe open with a few comments about uh, how exceptional it is, that would be actually a perfect place to start this conversation.
Oh, well, I know they've had some exceptional coaching. Coach Ad Rutschman at Linfield is a legend, in the Northwest and well, pretty much all football circles if you go back far enough, and baseball as well, and so had legendary success there. But I used to coach at a place called George Fox University, which is just 20 minutes away from Linfield, and in the same conference. And so we had a geographical rivalry, but for a rivalry to be one, both sides need to win, and so it didn't really qualify in that category. And so Linfield, obviously it's a great place, of course, but I'm a little partial to George Fox myself.
Uh, I'm so impressed with how you opened that. I was like, wow, I cannot believe he was giving us accolades. He's saying very kind words. This is so different than what I just heard from him off script and before we hit record. And then there it was. You redeemed it. And so
Yeah.
for the listeners, Coach Ruick has some ties before Oregon State to George Fox, as he mentioned, which I think we're going to get into in the course of this conversation. I promise that'll be the last time I reference my alma mater during the chat. But again, I'm super excited on a serious note to dive in here because everything that I've read and sound bites that I've heard from you, Coach, you talk about being, a teacher, being somebody that's it's what your job as a coach is to create behavior change and to build a culture and a sense of belonging, which doing it at Oregon State is different certainly than some other programs, and so I'm excited to kind of build off of that. But where I think might be the best place to start is in kind of doing some prep for our call. Your parents, it sounds like were both teachers. Your dad was a coach, and I think we learn so much from about coaching and leadership and how we show up from our parents. And so it feels like an important place to me to start. And so I'd be curious, like, how did their example maybe shape the way you lead today?
In every way. They're incredible humans that have lived a selfless life of service. To retired teachers now that still sit three rows behind me in their 80s, that drive down, about an hour, 20 minutes to every game and travel on the road with us as well. And so, I grew up just watching that example day in and day out, and I certainly was the beneficiary of their example at home with me and my sister Heidi. I should say that Coach Rutschman, who I've already alluded to in this conversation, was my dad's high school football coach at Hillsborough High School, and is the reason my dad went to college. And I don't think my mom would have married a guy who didn't go to college. And so Ad Rutschman might be the reason I'm even here. And so, it is a small world. But that level of selflessness that I watched, and their investment in other people, staying in the same community their entire career, watching just how many people they impacted, I mean, generationally now, is remarkable. And so I just aspire to be like that. I always have. They were very inclusive. The team, my dad's teams were at our house. My mom's investment in her students went beyond the classroom. and so they just built communities and they were incredible community members, and so I've been able to work and coach now at two universities that are absolutely relationship based. George Fox was that for me. It was this small, amazing place that I got to practice all those things and practice being like mom and dad, and was rewarded as well for that in such a warm, comfortable environment for me as I grew as a professional. And then getting dropped here back onto my campus at Oregon State, which is my alma mater and my mom's, was just a very similar experience. As big as it is, it's a relational place, and so I just have done my best to carry on their legacy because from everything I see, it's the best way to live.
Mm. It makes a lot of sense in hearing you describe that too, which we'll get into a little bit later, why places like George Fox and Oregon State have been so meaningful to you, not just from, being a coach and X's and O's and trying to, win championships and things like that, but also that sense of community, that kind of like smaller town, like that place where the whole kind of community can kind of come around to the program. And then to hear you kind of talk a little bit about the selflessness as well, like I think that there's a lot of other coaches that we've had conversations with in this first season that have talked about, coming from the place of, hey, how can I serve you, how can I best support you, and helping the people that we lead be kind of co-drivers with us. I think that's what a lot of those really selfless leaders are able to create. And so I think it's very cool to kind of hear where that started from for you at such an early age.
Yeah, I mean, that was the model. And I should say, I had four grandparents that all lived into their 90s, and two of them were really 10 minutes away, and the other set were 30 minutes away. And so they were a big part of my life growing up, and their example was the same. And so where my parents came from, it was modeled for them as well. And so I'm just trying to pay it forward, but that servant leadership, there's something to that. And I think everybody ultimately gets there. I can remember, back being a young coach and winning a conference championship for the first time, and just grinding so hard, to achieve something like that, to prove myself, and the word is myself. So was it about me? Was it about the team? And, I would never have thought that it was about me, but it was probably more about me than I would have wanted it to be in my mind. And then I remember once the banner was up and the season was over and I got coach of the year that year, and I remember just sitting there going, nothing's changed. Nobody treats me different. Nothing, and nobody even cares, actually. The banner's nice. It's fun to reflect upon. But man, this certainly isn't about me. And the longer I'm focused here, the more miserable I'll be, the more, I don't know, probably just not helpful, honestly. And it's a shallow existence if that's what you're valuing ultimately. And then it was just easy to reflect back and go, okay, this is totally about them. And it's just about how better can I serve them today than I did yesterday. And when my focus is there, which is hard to do in this world, that's when I'm being my best version, and that's when I'm actually being useful.
In one of my conversations earlier in this season, we talked a little bit about kind of this illusion of achievement and kind of this arrival fallacy where we think like, hey, we have these goals, we have this mountain that we're envisioning climbing, and then we hopefully achieve it somewhere along the ways or summit one of them. And then we realize that behind one mountain, there are more mountains to climb, if you will. And like we also don't necessarily physically or anything change in that process and stuff. And so it's a really powerful reframe that you're talking about of like, it's not just about the championships, the accolades, that's a piece of it, but it's certainly also it's about the relationships. And that I think servant leadership certainly helps kind of create those. I've heard you talk about the importance of trying to help people on and off the basketball court, and I think that's just a really good place to come from, and with it too, you became a head coach at 27, going back to your days at George Fox, and so you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but when you think about that version of you at the start versus the version of you now, what has remained the same, and what's evolved for you in your approach to coaching and leadership?
Well, I've always wanted the best for other people. I've always felt a deep responsibility and conviction for the people that I lead. Um, Probably out of balance at times, certainly early, where it was everything. It was my life. It was like this team is going to win, and I'm going to get that kid to here, and just this passion and this drive, was so palpable, so real, and it's still there. It's just it manifests differently now. I know I'm an emotional person. Maybe we all are. I don't know. I've had a harder time controlling mine. I think most people can tell what I'm feeling by looking at me. I think, and I think that's great. That's who I am, and but that can come out if I don't control it very well in probably ways that I'm not proud of at times, or ways that it could have been better for sure. And so I think as a young coach, you're just doing your best. And like I referred to a moment ago, it was about proving myself. I'm a 5'4" guy who didn't play college basketball, trying to make a name in college basketball for some reason. I was going to be a high school coach like my dad, high school boys. And then my sister went to George Fox, and she's younger than me. And so her junior year, I got invited to be, an assistant coach. The head coach was Sherry Merle. She called, a family friend of ours, and she called and said, "Hey, you want to be my assistant for $2,000, a year?" And I'm like, "Yes, that sounds amazing. Try college, coach my sister," which I'd been doing for, I felt, my whole life. And next thing you know, I'm at the college level, loving it. I loved coaching women. I loved, an opportunity that I hadn't considered before. And 3 years later, I'm the head coach. And so I'm out to prove some things, and I felt like I had a lot to prove. And I loved that chip on the shoulder, like, let's see what we can do and find a way. And so I know that I burned pretty hot inside, and I'm sure I was much more, I don't know, yeah, just emotional, I guess, back in the day. And certainly strategies change and methods change, but I've always felt like my mission is the same. I've always felt like it's my responsibility to get the most out of this team this year, however I can. And each group is different, so I've got to find a way with this team, and how can I motivate them this way or that way? And so I'd say, at this point in my life, that's a long time. It's 29 years now that are in the rear view. This is year 30 coming up of being a head coach. And, you learn so many things that I guess there's very few things that could surprise me anymore. I've seen that, I've done that, I've experienced that. I also know there's unlimited answers to every question. It seems like there's not just any simple answer. And I think early in your life, as you're getting started, you don't have as many options to lean upon, and you don't have the wisdom that you have later, to where maybe you think, okay, there's one or two things we can do. Well, at this point, it's like, man, there's about 25 things we can do right now, and I better pick the right one. And I need to use really savvy discernment. And so I think if I were to say probably one massive area that's different is just patience. I've just learned to be patient through situations and allow, instead of forcing the student to be ready, waiting until they are, because you can't really force them. You can try, but to present this or this, and then, be ready to pounce when that person demonstrates a desire for the next step. And I really have enjoyed that process, stepping back and just observing maybe more than trying to dictate everything. And that has been a very valuable key and made me more impactful, I would say, over the last several years.
I think that challenge is something that I've heard from a lot of coaches, right? Is it's kind of that notion of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, kind of so to speak. And that notion though that there are times where there's a sense of urgency, where there's a sense of like, hey, like maybe we do need somebody to make a change or to do something differently here. I would be
Mhm.
curious, like for you, how have you kind of balanced that patience with also the urgency that can sometimes show up as a coach and within the course of a season? And if there's a time that stands out to you at all as where like that was really tested more recently.
Well, this last year, this last season, I mean, we could talk about that this last season forever. And I should say the last 12 months or 14 months now. It could be a book. It's something, that we've experienced here that in our program in particular that I never could have imagined, the transitions that we all went through and then navigating them and then finding success with a new group in a relatively short amount of time, but last year we had to go as far as any group I've ever been a part of because of the circumstances, the outside circumstances, who we were, where everybody came from, and so managing the expectations, being realistic with where we are, and I think that comes with wisdom, being able to step back and just go, okay, we are not. My expectations are unrealistic right now. I mean, just basically saying that and recognizing that I cannot ask this group to do what I want them to do at this moment. It's not fair. And so if I do, that would lead to frustration, their resentment. They would feel it. And so to back off and go, okay, we are not going to be a very good rebounding team for a little while. And that is not true of my program. That is not true of who we are. It goes against our core principles as a program. Who cares? It's not about me. And it's not about what this program was a year ago. It's about what this group is now. And then how can I strategize and day by day make us better so that they don't even know it's happening? Because it's not fair to put it on them. I'll bring it up this way or that way. I can show them proof, through statistics. I can show them video, which is obviously very impactful in a caring way, though, not in a shameful way. And then all of a sudden something might click, and you just pray that it clicks with somebody that people listen to within that locker room. And once it does, it will catch. And so that I could choose 10 categories right now, for the progress that we needed to make last year early, and so you just hope your schedule triggers something within the group, hope it gets them to another level. We played UConn last year in November, and that game, we refer back to that game. We still refer back to it. It was the day that the team understood how hard they have to play. You're not going to play against UConn unless you're giving at any level of success, unless you're absolutely playing as hard as you can, both mentally and physically. It's your option. And this team gave into that. We outscored them in the second half. We were down 20 at halftime, so it wasn't close, However, we outscored them for a half, the national champs. And that half was something that gave us hope and strength. And then I would just remind them, hey, remember that second half. That's who we are. Our director of ops, Olivia, I said, what is your advice for the team today? And I kind of put her on the spot, in an advice role, in a team meeting in between that game and our next one. And she says, it's going to take the same thing we did against UConn to get this win. And she said the words, nothing less, nothing less. Mm. And so certainly Boston College is not going to get the same emotional response from you as UConn will. No offense to them, but there's only one UConn. And so it was going to take the exact same effort, just nothing less. So it's just moments like that and categories, and it evolves through the year. And that's why I believe coaching is an art. This is not anything black and white. This is as gray and evolving and fun because of it. And I just love the dance, that each year provides, and navigating that dance, is the beauty of coaching in my mind, and leading, and picking your spots and being so intuitive, and observant with your group, and knowing what to do when. and then having the conviction to step in, and the courage to step in sometimes when you might not want to, but it's for the best of the group. And yeah, so I could go down countless roads, with that, but that's maybe my favorite part of my job.
There's definitely a few threads within that I'm excited to kind of pull back on. And earlier you mentioned just how oftentimes, as you've gotten deeper into your coaching career, the recognition that there's unlimited answers to questions now, right? And this notion that coaches love players that are adaptable, but how important that that's also reciprocated as a coach and as a leader to be flexible, to be fluid, especially as there's already these ever evolving changes that are going on externally within this game and society and so on, but then also just even within your own team and how you're showing up every day. And earlier you were talking about the development of patience over the course of your career. I would be I'd be curious if this resonates at all for you. And I don't know if this is how you've thought about it, but like I've talked to players in the past about there's a difference between competing emotionally and competing with emotion. And those are kind of two separate. The former, when you're competing emotionally, you're very reactive. You're very your emotions are on your sleeve, and sometimes there's that residue of a reaction that you then carry over into the next pitch, the next possession, and so on. I would, for you, when you think about that distinction, coaching with emotion versus coaching emotionally, is that in alignment with how you see your growth as a coach?
Yeah, for sure it is, and it's one of the things we talk about as a group. I mean, that'll be a huddled conversation, late in a game. This is not emotional. This purely comes down to execution, and so the emotion gets you to the point where you care enough to focus, and it certainly can heighten things at moments, and it's useful, but the bottom line is who's going to just execute better? Who's going to get it done? And so when people, the comment I get more than any other from our fans and observers is, how do you stay so calm? I hear it all the time. And I'm like, it's pretty funny because on the inside, I want to break something, or I want to, I am not there on the inside, but on the outside, I have to project it. I want to win this game so bad. I want to win every possession so bad. If we get scored on, it just kills me. And so that passion and that emotion that's inside here is what has fueled my efforts and fueled my energies and fueled my career. It's this inner thing that it's not me. It was put here. It's just who I was created to be. And but managing that is my responsibility. And so helping my players manage their emotions is my responsibility. You don't see our team being overly emotional until it's the right time to be it. A timeout coming off the floor, you hit a big shot, you better not, that ball's coming back at you, next play. And so we'll wait till after the game, but yeah, so emotion can be a great thing or it can be an absolute distraction, if it's not managed. And so I want to help them use this very extreme example in their life, this extreme moment of college sports. There's not many things like this beyond this. And yet, if you can manage your emotions and learn how to during this phase of your life and manage yourself in a locker room after a bad practice, manage yourself on a game if you didn't play very much and you feel like coach is mad at you or not giving you a fair shot, or you get a cheap shot on the court, you name the situation that might trigger emotion. If you can learn to manage yourself in those situations in a way that you're proud of and you feel good about, is there a better life skill than that? Because that's going to happen the rest of your life. And so we've got such a great opportunity to help each other at this time. and I know that it's my responsibility to lead the charge personally, in that area. And so it's an area I've really had to work, throughout my life. Um, and I feel like I'm getting there.
So we're all humans in progress. For you, building off of that, what are the personal habits or boundaries that you feel like have helped you kind of stay centered so you can lead with the right type of emotion and consistently for your players?
Yeah, journey of self-awareness. I mean, that's really what life is. And, this has been kind of the ultimate test for me, as a human, is to be in this environment where you're so easily judged from the outside and not to be impacted by that either positively or negatively. Certainly the accolades that even a fan might, hey, coach, hope you're having a great day, when I run to the store later on that I might get. That feels good, but it's not why I do what I do. It's, the I so this job has basically put me in a place where I have to grow, and it's a discipline. It's like you sign up for this camp for discipline. That how long can you grind today? How long can you concentrate? How what do you do when you're at your wit's end and you need rest? And if you don't manage these things well, you're going to get spun out, and you're going to become something that you're you're just not at your best. And so for me, I've had to learn who I am. This has taught me who I am. It's taught me what I like, what I don't like. It's taught me when I'm on my A game, when I'm not. And then my job and my responsibility is to be on my A game all the time. Every day is game day. It's on our walls, and it's a great way to live. I don't care if you're on a team or not. Every day is game day. Every day is a war of some kind for each of us. And there's no exceptions to that. You're going to have a great day or you're not. And it's up to you. How are you going to manage yourself? So I've learned to rest. I've learned to know, I know when I'm not in a great place to walk in the gym, I won't. I will just not. I'm
Mhm.
not I'm not in a good place at the moment. Whatever just happened spun me out. I should not walk in there right now. Well, there was a time I'd still walk in there, and I'd have to manage it in there, and something probably comes out of my mouth I don't regret, or I regret, or I don't feel good about, or maybe nothing comes out because I'm not in a good, so get your head right, So I learned a long time ago this concept of a trigger word, where you just say this word to yourself and it puts you right back into where you want to be, your optimal state. So I can just say, this, whatever my word is at the moment, but I'll say that word. I'm like, okay, bam, I'm back. I got it. I've managed that. So I think on a daily basis, just spiritual disciplines for me. Um, if I start my day right with God, that day tends to just go better. It just does. If I take that time. As I go during the day, if I get a break, and I'm more introverted than extroverted, even though I can be both, I gain energy in alone time. Shutting my door sometimes, which I don't love, to my office, but I know I need to, and so I'll shut my door, and it'll just be me. I'll go for a walk. I'll go for a drive, come back, and then I'm better. When I'm at my best, it's time to work. Like, let's go. Let's get stuff done, and I can get a lot done in a short amount of time. So putting in the binaural beats or whatever music, is best for me at the moment to get my head there. And then just managing my energy is probably, the biggest adjustment, over the last 5, 6 years, where I've learned it. I wouldn't say it's selfish, but it might appear that way. I guess it's like I just got to get by myself for a little bit, but I need it, and it makes me better for everybody else. And so it's been this journey, of just self-awareness for, a long time now.
When you say for the last 5 or 6 years, this has become more of a practice, and you've referenced multiple different habits and tools and things that you've used to help you keep anchored. Was there a catalyst moment, or was there, when you trace it back those 5 or 6 years, what was happening then that caused that to really shift? Because it sounds like it may have been developing still even prior to, but what makes that 5 or 6 year mark ago, where that really started to shift?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, looking back further than that, I think I was around 30, early 30s, when I read about introversion and like, why do I like staying up late? I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Um, and then it's like I was just craving alone time. And I realized that's when I work my best, I don't know. It was like, okay, I guess maybe I have some introverted tendencies. I mean, that wasn't
Mm,
really a thing, previous to that. I had not heard of Myers-Briggs or I hadn't heard of the Enneagram or anything like that, before that age. I mean, we're talking, 20, more than 20 years ago now. And so at that point, I learned, okay, I learn about myself. Well, I would say, like you said, 5 or 6 years ago, I really did a deeper dive on me. Um, I just was really kind of over myself, I guess, to where, I was no longer insecure about admitting, okay, I suck at this, or I'm good at this. I'm like, yeah, I just want to be better, and so I think I was just at a place professionally and in every way where I just kind of released the grip that I had, on everything, where you're just so vigilant. I'm like, I've got to control everything and everything's dependent upon me, which goes against my faith, but at the same time is so human. And, and I think I just recognized I don't really have the control I think I do, or I thought I did. I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy this and I'm going to be maybe more effective for other people. And the only way I can be is if I'm better personally. And so I was just got to that point where I was just like, I got to let go a little bit. And, and once I did, I just was able to, I was more impactful. I think it was easier for people to be around me. I wasn't as heavy. My presence wasn't. And that was a beautiful little stretch of time for me to kind of have that awareness. Because previously I really didn't care, you know. And then I realized I think I'm maybe missing the boat a little bit, so I just need to chill out a little bit. And um, things have gone well, since then, even though they've been massively chaotic
mm, mm.
with the external world has, I should say.
Yeah, externally, there's more maybe chaos and uncertainty,
When,
but internally, I almost hear more like peace, like more calmness, more even maybe fulfillment, and kind of how you're describing it, like because there's a distinction that I'll talk to people about. I think we're at this point in society, and obviously, especially those in sport, where we talk about working out, right? Like everybody knows now the benefits of physical exercise, and not only what that does for us from a physical health standpoint and longevity standpoint, but also from a mental and emotional health standpoint.
Mhm.
However, there's the distinction is there's working out and there's also working in, and working in is doing like the inner work. It's like understanding who you are, your values, your identity, your purpose, exploring the stories that we all like. Our brains are natural storytellers, and we like to tell a lot of stories, and unfortunately, a lot of them are not true. Or we
Mhm.
embellish them in a way, and we start to believe that they are, and so forth. And so, it's cool to kind of hear the evolution of your coaching journey. It almost sounds like, hey, in the last 5 or 6 years, this was already a process that maybe there were seeds planted for, but really the practice that has now become more foundational for you is this idea of like making sure that I'm leading inside out first.
A million percent. Yes. I mean, that's it. You've got to be your best version in order to help other people, in my opinion, as effectively as possible. If you're focused on you, you can't focus on them, and if you're worried about how you might be perceived or what you might, I mean, you're all over the wrong path in that state. I have to be so cognizant and so aware of the student's needs. I don't want to miss one thing. I don't want to miss one sign that I might be able to pick up upon that could help them, or help us. And so I just feel like there's a presence that is just different. And so for me, it's getting out of the way. Honestly, 100% getting out of the way. And I've wanted that for a long time. I will tell you that. I mean, that's something I would say from day one. When I was student teaching, I would say that.
Mm.
My job is to create an environment for them to flourish, and I'm good at it. And I've always been good at it. We're talking about, we're leveling up percentage points, and so, we go back to the example of my parents aligning with great people. They taught me that. And if you look at the teams I've been able to coach and the athletes and their families that I've been around my entire career, it's mind blowing. It's like this massive blessing. Now it's like, how can I just be a little bit more impactful this year than last? And then I think it's just this culminating thing where, the world starts to dim just a little bit. And, what that means is things I can't control starts to dim just a little bit. I just don't worry about it anymore. I hate to bring this word up, but I think COVID changed some of that for me. Probably had a massive impact on everybody. I know it did. For me, it was just an absolute releasing of any control. I mean, we don't have any. We have so little say. It's just, who are we in this environment that we showed up in today? And yeah, I can impact things around me, but I can't control, but I can control me. And so I need to show up the best version of me with the proper attitude, proper mindset. And I need to make sure that I'm completely others focused. And this is a word I haven't used yet, but with no fear involved, with no insecurity. With just full belief that I'm where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to do. And for whatever reason I'm here to help you, and I'm going to do everything I can for you. And when I'm there, that's an A game day right there. And how many people can I help? How many people, and then of course, involved in that is taking care of me. So I'm capable of being great for someone else and being what they need, so, any form of control, obviously the other word for that is fear, so it's basically getting to that fearless state of being, where you've kind of surrendered in many ways to circumstances beyond your control. And that is I've just learned that's a very healthy, good place to operate from. You can be very creative in that state. And, I think we're all made to create at some level.
How, if at all, does the word love show up for you in how you coach? Because I think what you're also describing is almost if there's this continuum, fear and insecurity being on one, the other space, like how I listen to you describe the environment you're trying to create. I hear a lot of like love, but I'm curious. I'd be curious if at all that's a word that is used in your coaching practice.
Yeah, I love that you asked that. Um, that is that's the goal. We can. The only reason I'm sitting here at Oregon State is because the 2009 George Fox team won the national championship. It's the only reason they would have hired me, is that I had that on my resume. And so 10 true freshmen, no returning starters, and somehow we go 32-0, somehow beating the Linfield Wildcats twice that season. And then
Miracle.
cutting the nets, at Hope College in Michigan. We beat Washington University and the great Nancy Fahey, Hall of Fame coach. Somehow this team, accomplished something that was so beyond me. There's no way I could have done that by myself. I mean, it was crazy how that came together. Obviously, it makes no sense. We were honored on the Nike campus in Beaverton at the Oregon Sports Awards as the College Team of the Year, and our captain Elise Kinsey at the time, Elise Trask, took the mic to accept the award and said, "Love wins." Because the only reason we're here is because we loved each other. And obviously there's a basketball component. We were a very good basketball team. They were talented, all these things, of course. But there's lots of talented teams. But that team just had this crazy chemistry from day one, and they fought like crazy for each other. And that has been, basically the foundation of my programs forever. I learned it as a player. I learned it living at Marvin Mary Lou's house my whole life. My parents growing up, and with my family. I learned it at church growing up. It's all about relationships, and it's all about putting others before you, And so while this outside world says, put you first, fight for you, you deserve that, you do you, all these things. I mean, that is the world today, in most instances, in most situations. And a lot of people will tell you that. A lot of good people will tell you that. Yeah, you got to put you first. Well, yeah, you got to take care of yourself. But a me first life leads to all the wrong things. I've learned that. So putting love first, putting relationship first, putting your teammate first, your staff member first, whenever possible, is what this program is built upon. Sacrificing for each other. That's what's been modeled. I hire people that emulate this. In fact, two of our coaches right now are two women that played for me, Sydney Weiss and Devin Hunter. They came back for that exact reason, and they are great examples of that. They are so selfless. So every day the team gathers in the gym in our practice facility, and it is the place to be, And I learned to describe it as a 3-hour vacation. By the time you get here and leave, it's around that amount of time. And what is vacation? It's doing what you love with the people that you love in a place that you love. I mean, that's vacation. For me, it'd be North Shore, Sunset Beach, throwing a football with my family, playing in the water. I mean, that's my happy place. And well, this gym is my happy place too. And I say down here because it's right down there. And for every day, I just watch the team come in, the music turns on, and it's just vacation, man, every day. And so when we acquire talent, I am looking for a mature young woman who would appreciate that and enhance that. Are you outward focused, or are you self-focused? It's really hard to be outward focused at 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, but they're there. There are people that understand that, and there are families that appreciate that. And when you have a group of that, the sky's the limit, for your team. And if I say that my responsibility is to help this group reach its potential each year, which I believe, I don't want to have anybody in that locker room or on that court that's going to mess that up. I can't put any hurdles up. And so I'm only going to recruit someone that would only enhance that. And then, why we draw so well is because people come to Gill Coliseum to watch us play, and they see something that is really hard to find in life. They see a group that operates at a high level, win or lose. They have each other's back. They support each other. They love each other year in and year out. As the faces change, the mission stays the same. So love is the driving force. It is, what gets me out of bed every day. It's how do I take care of these people a little bit better than yesterday.
People talk about courage being how you act and how you show up in spite of fear versus the elimination of it, right? And so I think of this notion that when you function from a space and you create this environment of love, it also makes it easier for people to show up with courage too. And I know that that's something that you've talked a little bit about, of wanting your players to approach life and basketball from a space of courage. What are some ways that you've tried to create an environment where courage, yes, is talked about, but it's also practiced within your culture?
I think, yeah, that's a great question. Courage is demanded, and I think a person is more apt to operate in a courageous way when they feel loved, and when they feel accepted, and when they can just show up as they are, and it doesn't matter what they're wearing, who they are, none of those things matter. It's just, hey, I'm glad you're here. Let's go. And when that's the case, it's easy to put fear aside and say, yeah, I can do this, or I'll give it a shot. Well, what we do demands a lot of courage. To swing for the fences every year, and, to pray to cut nets every year and have that as your goal, knowing that there's a chance that you could do everything possible and not get that, takes courage. In our program, the expectations are high. That's one of the things that was instilled with me. If you're going to play, win, and you can find a way to win. Every game's winnable. And I believe that. I mean, I've been in a couple that might not seem that way, but you can find a way. And that's my expectation. And so for our athletes to come in and play for a coach that sees their potential, truly cares about them, and is committed to my word, which is, I'm going to make you a pro, if we work together, obviously you got to do your part, but my expectation is that you reach every dream that you have, and then maybe a few beyond that, that you're walking into a slightly uncomfortable environment, because it's hard to be at your peak every day. It could be a day you're not feeling great or whatever, and the expectations you're getting it done at the highest level, within reason, and of course, like I've said, it not with unrealistic expectations, just real expectations. You can do that. That takes courage each day, and then it becomes more comfortable, and then the bar raises a little bit more, and that takes courage to keep letting the environment level you up, and give into it. When they do, greatness happens, magic happens. It becomes a transformative experience. We are a very outward focused program. We are in the community. I put players as many times as I can in an outward focused or an outward facing place, so that they can grow, in that environment, start to see themselves as leaders in the community, help them understand their impact and how great their impact can be because of the platform they have, but even beyond that, just because of who they are and how special they are. And so that's not exactly comfortable all the time, and that takes courage to elevate, into that situation. And then I'd say, showing your peers who you are takes courage, especially those, within the locker room situation. And so we are a player, as much as possible, a player-led program, meaning I'm asking questions more than I'm giving instruction. I want them to tell me, this is what I think we should do next. This is where I feel like we should go. This is how we're doing right now. And so calling on them and getting their input in front of the group, in important moments, or taking a time out and to say what needs to happen right now. You guys tell me. I mean, you're out there on the floor and we're all working together. I want them to be coaches, and so for some people, they've not been in that situation or that role. And so truly getting the person out of any form of shell that they might have previously been existing in is one of my hopes for each of them, because they're each amazing, and the sky's the limit for them all, and I want them to see that and understand that.
I admire the layers and levels to that response when it comes to in the form of courage, and how it's not just between the lines, it's how it shows up in every facet, if you will, of lives, and how to also extend that. I think it's also something you kind of touched on, and whether you use the idea of courage, people talk about resilience. It's not a solo journey. We need a lot of other people around us. We know that one of the sources of a resilient person and group is the sense of community that they have and the support that they have from other people. And so it's cool to kind of hear how you've fostered that over the course of years. And it kind of segues a bit to, you've touched on this, but I'm curious. I want to pull back the layer of how you've created consistency of identity and culture in your program when there's these external structures, things like new conference, you talked about the roster changes, the turnover, just the surrounding culture and landscape in college basketball now. When that's all shifting, how have you kind of created a sense of consistency with your culture in the program?
Yeah. There have been a lot of changes and, a lot of reason to question, doubt, um, think things are different, maybe. And I have been so weirdly at peace through it all. And I I almost don't care because I can't control it. It kind of goes with everything else, and so I'm just going to be me, and I'm going to do what I do, and we're going to be who we are, as long as they let me be here, and I get to recruit to this, to my school. These kids are going to be treated like gold every day, and I'm going to coach the heck out of them, and I'm going to surround them with great people, and I'm going to demand, their very best so that they can achieve, and we will be family. Period. I mean, our slogan is "We are family," and that's our brand, and it's true. It's just what we are. So a year ago, a year ago March, we go to the Elite Eight. It's amazing season, and we have all 13 players could come back. 8 leave over the next 3 weeks. Largely due to the conference realignment. Who knows why each person transferred, but we got hit as hard as anyone. To me, it made sense. Yeah, we're the Pac-12 is no longer, and all of their market value was as high as ever, based upon the success we had had. And so 8 leave and 8 go to 8 different schools. So this past year you could watch Oregon State every night. Over the next month after they left, we acquired 7 new. And day one, it was like, these people have been here forever. And it was just like, all right, here we go. And I was excited about that group. Certainly you mourn the losses, you mourn your vision for what it could be, because that takes time. And it was hard and it sucked. And I didn't want to experience that, but that's the hand we were dealt. So you deal with it. And you're like, okay, wish you all the best. Don't burn any bridges, because it's not about me. It's not, why would I do that? And get excited for what's next. And so we had this amazing group this past year that I love just as much. And it was just next day of doing business, so the faces changed, but the mission stayed the same. And, then you have to reevaluate the methods. Who are they? And that was like, for a teacher, kind of like so fun. It's like, okay, let's figure out this new puzzle. Can we get them to be competitive, with all the changes and differences? And so I just saw it as a challenge. And, so whatever's to come in the future, same. I mean, I could be coaching middle school tomorrow, and I would have a blast coaching them, and we'd try to be a great team, and so I just love teaching and coaching, and that will never change.
That's, I think, a nice transition to, I want to kind of come down to the last little bit here of our conversation. And I think in different ways, you've described kind of your evolution and growth process as a coach. And I kind of want to pull back a couple layers within that just a little bit. And something that you've talked a little bit about is getting to a point where you're asking more questions than ever before, being okay with knowing that there are often unlimited answers to whatever questions are being asked. Um, and also how you've tried to foster that within your staff too. And I think that's a challenge because it's a profession that sometimes rewards certainty, or we have this illusion of control that you've now referenced several times in it. How have you stayed open to learning and not falling into that trap of having all the answers, for you yourself? And if you were giving advice to other coaches out there about not falling into that trap, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, a trick or a to think that you have all the answers, is just you're being deceived, by your experiences or whatever. Nobody has all the answers. People can become experts for sure and find great methods and ways of doing things, but that doesn't mean there's not a better way. And the group that you have might completely be different. And so something that worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. And I can think back to my career. I think had been coaching for 8 years, as a head coach, and run maybe two possessions of zone in 8 years. And I just was like, oh, we're player to player, we're man to man. That's the best way to play. And then my roster changed, and I felt like I had job security. I'd never coached much zone, obviously, and I was like, you can't rebound out of a zone, you can't guard the 3-point line out of a zone, all the cliche things that every person would say. And then I had to zone. I had to do something. I had a 5'11" center, and that had experience, and a couple 6'1" kids, but they were true freshmen. And I'm like, I can't do what I did last year. We're going to get killed. And so, okay, let's roll the dice. So come out, 2-2-1 press, back to this 1-1-3, Mike Dunlap's Metro State zone that somebody shared with me. And Jamie Sale actually shared that with me from Briarcliff and then Morningside in Iowa, NAI program. Very successful coach and super generous. I'm like, this guy, I just watched their scores the year before. I'm like, he's putting up 95 a game. That sounds fun. I got to do something this year. And so I adopted Bobby Huggins 5-out. This is back in the early 2004, 2005 season. And I'd never coached a 5-out before, never zoned before. I had one of the best, most enjoyable seasons of my career. Again, 10 true freshmen that year. We go to the Elite Eight, running a zone, pressing after makes or misses. And we were in control of every possession. And I'm like, my gosh, this defense, when it's run right and they buy in, we held our opponents to 27% from three that year. It's player to player with perfect help side built in. And if you're disciplined enough and you rep it enough, you can box out of it. And we didn't win the boards, but we would have to get out rebounded by 10 for it to be a close game. And so we could do that. We could keep it within 10 most nights. And so I learned that day, okay, there's lots of ways to do this. I was small-minded to think, that my way was best. And then I've just maintained that throughout. And so I learned from everyone. We have 3 kids, and I'll have conversations with, my kids, and our youngest, Macy's 13 now. Kate just graduated high school. She's 18. And then Cole's going to be a senior in college at 21. And Macy gives me as much wisdom. Just talking to her, I love her perspective. I'm like, you know what? That is brilliant. And so there's teachers everywhere you look if you're willing to continue to be a student. And so I have just enjoyed learning from everyone. And, some of the best teachers I've ever been around are my opponents, and trying to get ready to play against Tara and Stanford for the last 14 years. That level of execution and excellence, and talent, that they have had, was the ultimate, night in and night out. I mentioned UConn, getting to play against them a couple times, and just so on and so on and so on. But that goes back to Division III and my rivalries in Division III, which was not Linfield, but kind of. And so I just continue to evolve, and I'm kind of excited to see what can we figure out this year that can just level us up just a little bit, and make a little adjustment here or there. And so constant learning, stay curious. I think it's one of the keys to life.
With that, I know some of what you've described can be subject to your personnel and the group that you have and things, but what are some of those questions or challenges that you're still trying to learn more about that relates to leadership or coaching going into, you said year 30, as a coach? As you transition into chapter 30, what are those questions or challenges that you're still trying to explore within leadership and coaching?
It's a great question. I think the key to all of this is empowering those around you. Um, it takes a lot of security to do that as a leader, to relinquish control in some ways, and then to help. You know, knowing that there's certain things. Well, maybe I could do that better because of my background and the fact that I have years of experience maybe doing that. But ultimately, this person, you know, could do a great job of that, wants to learn, wants to do it, then that would allow me to focus a little bit more on this or that. So each year, I think the staff evolves. And so the job at Oregon State is the main difference. I mean, athletes are athletes. Certainly everything's bigger from the outside perspective. The more eyes, but students are students. I've been doing that for a long time, and I was at George Fox for 14 years, as the head coach. That hasn't changed as much. Working with a staff is way different. I had one part-time assistant at George Fox all that time, and here I have, six full-time employees in my office, and then we work, with a major university's athletic department and all the people. And so a lot of my insecurities have come out with the staff and working with adults. And man, this person's better than I am at that. And, how do I motivate adults and deal with them as they evolve in their career? And what if they leave, and for a while that really was hard for me. I was scared of it, and then I didn't know how to handle it when it happened. And so I am seeking to just enhance my ability to lead adults, even after 15 years now, and the changes. I've also seen the most growth in myself in that area over the years. And I had the furthest to go, though, and so being so grateful for their contributions and learning how to set them up for success, and learning, that in many cases, their ideas are way better than mine, and being so grateful for that, and really enjoying the team, at this level every bit as much as the team down on the court, which was for a long time very uncomfortable for me. And so that's an area that I'm looking just to continue to get better in, and that's, I guess if you were to sum it up in one word, it's delegation, and empowerment. But I think when that is done well, you've created truly the place to be.
That brings me to, I've had this with other people. We've talked a little bit about like coaching trees, which I think is always, and there's a one that always gets referenced in the basketball world between with Greg Popovich, obviously, who, just stepped away as a head coach with the Spurs. And when you see his coaching tree, I mean, it certainly speaks to, on top of all the other anecdotes and sound bites that come out about his leadership and just kind of the manner in which he elevated and helped people level up, but also, like, I think great leaders are multipliers, and that's kind of what I hear you kind of talking about too, is that next step for you that has been in the process, it's already been happening, but also it continues, as you mentioned, to be refined and to grow, is how to multiply the people around you from a leadership standpoint. So with that, I have two final questions. One of which is, if you're willing, could you talk a little bit more about what are some of the ways that you feel like you have found success in trying to help develop the staff around you, and the adults around you? And we'll start with that and get to the last question here shortly.
Yeah. Well, I came, I was really blessed to be a young professional, a first-time head coach, at George Fox, and I worked for an athletic director that gave me my shot, and that Craig Taylor. He recruited my sister as the women's basketball coach to George Fox, and then he stepped down after her sophomore year just to be the AD. Ended up hiring me, a few years later, and he was just so amazingly supportive, and he just let me run. He treated me like an adult. And I just felt like, man, Craig really trusts me. Yeah, he's not micromanaging me. He just is letting me go, and I'm not somebody that really needs to be led. Meaning I'm self-motivated is what I'm saying here. I'm not saying I don't need leadership. I just, I'm going to go and I'm going to try as hard as I can. His mentorship was extremely valuable to me. I could walk in his office anytime I wanted, and I had this veteran coach and mentor and amazing human that gave me some of the best wisdom imaginable. So I've wanted to be that. I've wanted to create that. And I always said, if I ever leave George Fox, and, I figured I'd be a head coach because that's just what I wanted to be. So if I ever left it there, and I didn't think I would actually, because I didn't really want to move that much. And Oregon State obviously was the one place I probably would have left for, and here I am. I'm going to create the same environment, I want to anyway, that Craig did. And so it's been pretty easy for me to delegate in that realm, treat you like an adult. The basketball aspect is like my passion. It's what I feel like I'm best at. I'm teaching the student. That is who I am. I'm a trained instructor. So delegating that has been maybe the most difficult. Delegating the core, recruiting responsibilities, the core and organization, delegating the financial side of things. Certainly there's things that are easier to delegate than others. For all of us. But I have, empowered this staff to run in those categories. And then it's like, how much do I step in? How much do I check in? How much do I, so it's just this kind of constant battle. And then I think or constant tension, I should say. And I think it evolves each year with each person because they're evolving. So I think it has to be revisited. And so I would say that this past year, one of my focal points was really to thank our staff more often and show gratitude for what they did and acknowledgement in our meetings than previous years. And I know that I know what my Myers-Briggs is now, and I know what my weaknesses is. And one of them is not showing gratitude because my personality type just says, well, it's your job, so you should just get it done. I'm getting my job done. Why do I have to tell you good job for getting your job done? Nobody's telling me good job. So just get it done. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm some cold-hearted person that doesn't appreciate what they're doing. I do, but they're supposed to get that done. And so that's just their job. So they're just checking the box on their job. Well, obviously that's a little short-sighted. It feels good to be acknowledged. We all need it. It is motivating. It makes me feel close to you. It makes me feel, for lack of a better word, loved and appreciated. And so heightening that up my level, that's the first thing that I will lead off in a meeting. I will say, I really appreciate that idea. Thank you for bringing that to me. Or I saw this the other day that they might not have thought I saw, and said, I really appreciate that. And so that was a focal point this past year, and that's not leaving. And that is something that in this state of being that I'm in, I'm more apt to be aware of, and I'm more apt to act upon. And I think it's one of those things that can move the needle for us a little bit.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful off branch from coaching from a space and leading from a space of love to that gratitude and appreciation. So it fits right in alignment with that. That brings me, so I ask every guest this final question, Scott. And so I'll do the same here. And you can pull from either basketball or away from basketball, but what's something that you're proud of that maybe you don't always get an excuse to talk about?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, pride is an interesting thing.
Hmm.
Um, I would say, in our world, in our life, the Rueck family, Scott and Carrie, and then we've got Cole, Kate, and Macy. And I have, a long time ago, before I took this job, I actually called the football coach at the time, Mike Riley, before I said yes to this, because I knew it was going to be just this massive change from never being away from home to now being away from home somewhere between 70 and 100 days a year. Our kid, Macy was not here yet. We had Cole and Kate at 6 and 3, and when we made the move down here. And so I asked to talk to Mike Riley, who I really admired. I'm an Oregon State alum, Oregon State fan, and he was our football coach. And I don't think I've ever rooted harder for a person than Mike Riley, just known to be one of the best guys in sports. And so I called him, and he took my call, and I said, Mike, I know you've been at Linfield, at Whitworth, in the CFL, at different levels of football. Can I be successful as a coach? Can I be successful as a dad and a husband at Oregon State? And he said, Scott, if there's anywhere, it would be at Oregon State. He goes, I believe you can, because of the lifestyle here, community, and all these things. And so my conviction throughout was I will never sacrifice my family. This job has really put that in tension, I will say. I've felt at times I've had to miss things, but I will say the thing I'm absolutely proud of is my relationship with my kids. I've never put it on a back burner more than absolutely necessary. And when it was necessary due to travel, I made sure I was intentional in other ways as best I could. And I'm not saying I've been perfect, but I just look at my relationship with those three, and I couldn't be more proud of the people that they are. Carrie has done an insane job with them as mom and wife, and I'm so grateful to her and all of her incredible efforts, to in some ways do the single parent thing, while I'm traveling for recruiting at different times. COVID changed things a little bit when it comes to being away from home. It's easier to pull up recruits online. Our days, the NCAA has shortened our days, that we're out and away from home. And I've really enjoyed that, because of that reason in particular. And so Cole gets a lot of notoriety because of his golf, and so our fans, everybody knows about Cole. Kate and Macy, people don't know as much about. Maybe there's a reason for that, just in safety and the different things of the world. But, they're just insane, amazing humans, and I love them so much. But that's probably when I think of the whole thing, that was my goal coming down here. And, I would say that has remained, and I feel good about it, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah. As you should. I think it's very fitting that we started this conversation talking about your parents, your grandparents, your family. So to bring it kind of full circle here at the end with talking about them again in the form of your wife and your kids is I think fitting. And we've covered a lot of ground, which I'm incredibly grateful for, Scott. We've talked about building this sense of community and the culture that you've created at Oregon State, and doing so through the form of being a servant leader and being selfless, and this sense of selflessness throughout it. We've differentiated the difference between coaching with emotion and coaching emotionally, and just how that's evolved for you over the course of your time, and just this space that you've reached in terms of having no fear, no insecurity, or at least awareness around when those things show up, how to look within and create some boundaries and express gratitude and so forth. So there was a lot that we covered, and I think there's a lot that can be taken away for those that tune in. So I'm super appreciative of what you've shared today.
Well, I'm grateful for you, Zach. Thanks for doing what you're doing. It's
Yeah.
been a pleasure to be with you.